You know those little disagreements you have with a neighbor? A fence that's too high, a dog that barks too much? Well, what happens when something as simple as a security light escalates into a full-blown legal war? That's what we're digging into today, a neighborhood feud that went all the way to a judge. So it really does start with something you see in basically every neighborhood in America, a security floodlight. But for this homeowner, Brenda Norman, this light wasn't about feeling secure. It was a nuisance, just blasting directly into her yard, right into her home. You'd think it's a simple fix, right? Ask them to move it. Well, as we're about to see, it was anything but simple. Now, this wasn't some shouting match over a backyard fence. This thing started as a pretty simple complaint in the late summer, but it just kept spiraling. For months, the whole issue just festered until it blew up into a formal legal petition. And that's how this little neighborhood problem landed in front of an administrative law judge. Okay, check out this timeline. It really shows you how this thing dragged on. It all kicks off in August 2021. Brenda Norman files that first complaint with her HOA. A month later, the neighbor does install a new light, but for Norman, the problem isn't solved. So she gets frustrated and files an official state petition in October. And by January, what started with a light bulb is now a formal legal hearing. And this is where the whole conflict really pivots. See, it stopped being just about two neighbors. It became a battle between a homeowner and the very organization that's supposed to manage the community, her Homeowners Association, the Rancho Del Lago Community Association. So you've got two completely different stories here. Norman's argument was super simple. Hey, this light breaks the rules you wrote, and you're not doing your job to enforce them. But the HOA's community manager, a guy named Spencer Broad, he argues that they did investigate and that the new light was perfectly fine. He even kind of hinted that maybe Norman had some other reason for pushing this so hard. All right, let's step into the hearing itself and see how this all played out. This is where both sides had to lay their cards on the table, present their evidence, and try to convince the judge they were in the right. So at the hearing, the HOA laid out their version of events. They said, look, we got the complaint, we talked to the neighbor, a new light went up. They told the homeowner, hey, case closed. And then they made this key argument that a light like this in a side yard, it didn't even need their approval in the first place. Okay, quick timeout for a term you're going to hear a lot in cases like this, CC&Rs. Just think of it as the official rulebook for the whole community. It's a legally binding document that everyone, the homeowners and the HOA, has to follow, no exceptions. And here it is. This is the exact rule that this whole fight was about. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Flood elimination is to be directed away from neighboring property. Simple. But look at that little phrase at the end, reviewed with submittal. That detail right there turns out to be way more important than anybody thought. So we've basically got a classic standoff. The homeowner is saying the light is still a huge problem. The HOA is saying they fixed it. So based on what you've heard so far, who do you think is right? You'd probably think the judge is just going to go out there, take a look at the light, and decide which way it's pointing. But that is not what happened at all. This case took a really sharp and honestly super unexpected legal turn.
Yeah, believe it or not, the actual angle of the floodlight, the entire reason this dispute started, it ended up being almost completely irrelevant to the judge's final decision.
And this is where it gets really weird. The judge pointed out that neither side, not the homeowner, not the HOA, had even bothered to provide the full text of the rule. He said he couldn't even be sure if the rule applied to side yard lights at all. I mean, what a huge miss for both sides. And this was the bombshell. It all came down to that little phrase, reviewed with submittal. The judge found that the neighbor never got approval from the Architectural Review Committee, or ARC. That's the official group that has to sign off on these kinds of changes. And the HOA, they never even checked if that procedure was followed. So in the end, the HOA didn't lose because the light was pointing the wrong way. They lost because they failed to follow their own official procedures. They literally violated their own rulebook by not making sure the light was approved before it ever went up. So that brings us to the final verdict. We know who messed up, but what did that actually mean for the homeowner and the HOA? What were the consequences? Officially, a judge declared the homeowner, Brenda Norman, the prevailing party. So on paper, she absolutely won the case. And since she won, she was awarded $500. It was a direct reimbursement for the fee she had to pay just to file the case in the first place.
But, and this is a big but, even though the judge found the HOA had violated its own rules, he decided not to slap them with a civil penalty. So the HOA didn't have to pay any extra fines.
Now, this is the really crucial part of the whole verdict. Look at what the judge didn't do. He didn't order the HOA to fine the neighbor. He didn't order the neighbor to take the light down, and he made no ruling whatsoever about where the light should be pointing. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this case is a perfect example of how in the legal world, and especially with HOAs, the process can be everything. Sometimes it's even more important than the actual problem you're fighting about. A simple procedural error, not getting that ARC approval, torpedoed the HOA's entire defense. And that leaves us with a real head-scratcher, doesn't it? Brenda Norman won her case. The judge said she was right, and she got her filing fee back. But that floodlight that started this whole mess, it's still there. It kind of makes you ask the question, when is a win not really a win at all?